Yeah.
Animals are fun now. I've got a whole party. Wine dregs.
Margaren's fire casts light in dark places.
Hey, some more money. I'm kind of running low. Bought a lot of shit. Trying to upgrade my keep or stronghold or whatever. I found a thing angry with me.
You
Wrong thing.
I'll let my
It's a really angry fox. Looks more like a wolf than a fox. I want to go this way instead. There we go. Just 4 hours. Oh yes, I should look at the bestiary. That'd probably be smart. Oh dear, these guys are... Bridgeman. I will click on them, I'm just taking a peek. Oh, I see, we're basically in the city now. Okay, let's see what this guy's about. You see a ship being tossed about in a storm-ravaged sea. The swells rise and fall, carrying the ship with them as if it were a toy. This man stands on the deck at the helm of the ship while the water whips around him. The crew moves about frantically, trying to keep the chaos under control. Chaos control! He barks out orders at them, pointing where to go and giving each one a task. The men, while still visibly distressed, seem to calm down when they are given their orders. He instructs the helmsman to resume his duties at the wheel and rushes to the aid of a crewman who is struggling with a rope attached to one of the sails. The ship crests a wave, going almost vertical in one direction and then immediately again in the other direction. Several of the crew are thrown from their feet, sliding across the deck as the ship rocks. Across the deck as the ship rocks, I think it's supposed to be. After the swell passes and the ship returns to a relatively normal orientation, the man quickly scans the deck, counting silently. No one has been lost this time, thankfully. He looks in the direction they're headed, seeing no reprieve from the storm in the sight. His jaw squared, his upper lip stiffened. He stiff up a lip. He returns to the helm and takes the wheel again. Sorry, I'm used to freaking Jacob from Fire Emblem. Stiff up a lip. Oh my. 1 second. You see a lavishly decorated room, walls hung with tapestries, ornate oil lamps creating a warm, relaxing atmosphere. There are several other overstuffed couches covered with silk pillows and an elegant table in the middle of the floor. The woman is seated at the table, sitting across from another woman. They are both well dressed, their style befitting the room they're in. The other woman's hair is blonde, in stark contrast to the woman's black, and is swept up on her head in a dramatic style. The women speak in an easy, free tone, obviously familiar with one another. Though each seem to be comfortable with the other's company, a strange nervousness surrounds the blonde woman's actions. She occasionally betrays herself with a giggle or stammer, hitching over an easy word as she speaks. Her demeanor swings from friendly to shy and then back again with no warming. This woman leans back a little in her chair, stretching lightly. As she finishes her stretch, she gently lays her hand next to the other woman's hand, letting her fingers subtly intertwine. The second woman stops speaking mid-sentence, inhales sharply, and turns red. She does not, however, move her hand. This woman smiles and moves her hand further over the other, holding it. Then she stands, moving around the table toward the blonde woman, whose face shows conflicting emotions of terror and lust. She giggles and pulls her hand out from under the other and brings it to her mouth, the red of her face deepening. This woman stops, looking down at her, eyes sparkling. She reaches out and pulls something from the blonde's hair, letting it fall around her shoulders. Then she leans over, brushing the lips lightly over the blonde woman's cheek, resting her mouth against her ear, and she whispers. Her hand moves sleepily down the other woman's body to her waist. The blonde shudders and leans into the hand, eyes closing, cheeks pressing against the lips, still whispering in her ear. This woman's hand deftly removes a small bag from the other woman's belt and secrets it under her own cloak at the small of her back. Then she gently kisses the other woman's cheek and stands again, smile never leaving her mouth. Oh my god, his hat. I have a matching hat, but it is pink. And
No
there's also
problem.
flowers over here I can grab. Wearing, sir? He's wearing his mother's drapes. She's wearing a cheerleader outfit. Takes a smooth tongue to solve problems, doesn't it? Wow. You see a flurry of matted white hair and an incandescent freeze fire staff before you see the man, cold and wild. He chews a wizened apple slowly. What would a wizened apple be? Like, what is a wizened apple? Like an aged apple? A ripe apple? A proper apple? Discharging spell after spell into the jumble of villagers, screeching their way towards him. Cold flame vents from his nose. Ugh. And apple seeds shoot out the side of his mouth as he saunters forward, ignoring arrows and curses alike. He's eating an apple to look more like an asshole. Look like more of an asshole. Deliberate twist of his staff and a bullet of force glides through the torso of one assailant and another. A roar blisters his throat as he launches himself into their midst, tearing into their essence with his staff. A bleeding hand reaches towards him and quickly falls ignored. Silence takes hold as the tattered man gathers his prize, a basket of fresh pears, and he hums as he eats. It's the pear ravager. Goose and fox. Watch yourself in the city, understand? I was going to, like, immediately steal from these guys. Hey, man. What is it? I'm looking for the Temple of Wodika. Huh, if you say so. It's in First Fires, just west of the Crucible Keep. Thank you. Okay.
Defiance Bay, the city at the heart of the Deerwoods Revolution, now seems on the brink of another. Refugees line the streets, homeless and hungry, displaced by White One's legacy, hoping for relief within the city walls, and finding none. Dissidents congregate to protest and to heckle, calling for an end to animancy and the ouster of their duke. The city's militiamen cast fearful looks as they patrol the streets,
I thought Duke was
their hands
DC.
trembling at the hilts of their weapons. The capital of a country that had not long ago incinerated
In
a
this game.
god now appears to be a spark away from sharing the deity's fate.
Okay. 0 hours have passed. Kitty! Can I pet it? I can make it jitter, but I can't pet it.
It used to be a lot less of a mess.
Animals have brought divine wrath upon us. And yet the Duke, see, and his noties in the Crucible Knights do nothing. Can we allow these atrocities to continue unchecked? No! Down with Animancy! I don't know why that dude had such a high-pitched voice. White Wind's legacy was one of warning, Heritage Hill was another. Spread the word, together we'll drive the blight of Animancy out of our city. This lady's dress. She looks like she's... Oh, I thought she's smoking. I thought she was texting. I'm like, excuse me? Hey, man.
How do you do?
Ah, I'm way too close to this situation. Also, I appear to be floating. Ron's arms are crossed and his mouth is set in grim frown as he watches the gathered protesters. He looks ready for a fight. He sizes you up. New in town, eh? You've picked an interesting time to visit Defiance Bay. All these refugees fleeing the frontier and finding the legacies no better here. It's the Animancers. Migrants scorch 'em, and they nest in this city like rats. You mark my words, though, as dozens are gonna put a stop to it. What are you doing out here? He gestures at the crowd, which buzzes with angry chatter. Mutter, mutter, grumble, grumble. Trying to get the folk to see reason. We're in the midst of a crisis, and instead of purging the nefarious forces from our city, the Duke is granting Animance's dangerous liberties. Okay, what do you know about animancy? It's the study and manipulation of essence, which any sane person will tell you is the purview of the gods. The Adirans at least had the sense to outlaw it, which is the only good thing I can say about them. It's not like magic chanting or the soul readings those ciphers do. It's been around since the ancient Ingwithan times, which is why you'll see animancers tinkering with the old Ingwithan artifacts. Kinda raises a fist to cough discreetly into it. Have to withdraw, but he's an enthusiastic performer, I'll give him that. He shakes his head. Trouble is, the Animancers got no idea what half those artifacts really do. Not that they'll admit it. Our empathetic friend here is correct about one thing at least. Tell me about the dozens. He taps his chest. We're an organization of interested citizens who want to free Defiance Bay from the dangerous influence of Animancers and the tyranny of the aristocrats. Crats. Meow. Who support them. Oh god, now that movie's popped into my head. We also consider ourselves a militia of sorts, seeing as the Crucible Knights are little more than a flock of preening nobles in training these days. Just like the militia, the dozens, except for the training, and the discipline, and the code of honor. His eyes gleam. And always looking to expand banned. The more people see things our way, the better for the state of our country. If you have any interest in hearing more, stop by Admiral's Den sometime, the Expedition Hall. A lot of free thinkers in there. Can set all the nonsense of the nobles and the animators want you to believe. Might even be some paid work there for motivated types. Tell me about Defiance Bay. He gets a mischievous gleam in his eye. His eyes are just continuously gleaming. I bet they don't teach about the colony that tranced the Hadrit's handmaiden back in the good old deer, do they? This is the capital of the free palatate of the Deerwood. We start out in the capital of an Endearing colony, but we booted out the flaccid scepter from these lands 150 years ago. Oh, dear God. These days, we're a major port receiving trade and visitors from all over the world. But we, some of us anyway, strive to hold on to the pioneering spirit that earned our freedom a century and a half ago. The city is divided into 5 districts. Copper Lane, First Fires, Andre's Gift, Brackenbury, and Heritage Hill. He takes off on a calloused finger. Tell me about Copper Lane. This here is Copper Lane. He taps a scuff boot on the cobblestones. It's primarily a market district, but you've also got the Expedition Hall directly north of here where you can join treks into the wilds. That's also where my fellow dozens martyrs and I tend to meet up with the concerned citizens. He points to the long domed building to the west and north of your position. And that's the Hall of the Revealed Mysteries. Eerie place if you ask me, but they got the biggest library in the Deerwood. Kenna laughs. Ha 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 ha. Eerie indeed. Might be less if more kith stepped inside. Perhaps we ought to visit Rins, and we'll see just what mysteries are revealed. Okay, tell me about Brackenbury. The noise of disgust rattles his throat. Ugh. The nobility that didn't sail back to a deer stayed here. Most of the families here trace their lineage back to the old imperial times. Other than that, a lot of it's has been nobility. You've got Hadrit House, where the Lady Webb and her spies operate. The Brackenbury Sanitarium, the main cesspit of animacy in the city. He spits on the cobblestones. Oh, dude, watch the boots. God. That's where the revolution started, hence the name. These days it's overrun with politicians and panderers, but we'll take it back someday. Man, I don't want to go over there. I've had enough of politicians and panderers over the last 2 years, and I'm not even frickin' American. That's where you'll find the Ducal Palace, the Valayan Embassy, and the Crucible Keep. He shakes his head. Crucible Knights were the original freedom fighters in Defiance Bay, but now they're just strutting peacocks with their eyes on fancy titles and their heads up their asses. There's an old temple of Boudica there, too. We keep it real nice for her. Wink. Oh, okay. Andre's Gift. Got the name because it was a wetland that was drained back in the imperial days. Now it's a seedy district populated by sailors, common folk, and more than a few thugs. That's a fun place too, if you know where to look. He winks and elbows you. Dude. Look for a place called the Salty Mast. Okay, I need to pause for a second. There's way too many innuendos in this for this to be an accident. In this last session alone, and then just the black everything up in the other place, in the Gilded Vale. Salty Mast. When you're there, other than that, it's mostly warehouses and abandoned homes. You're in Heritage Hill. He shivers. Used to be the most prestigious districts in the city. Heroes of the Revolution claimed plots up there next to the ancient Angwithan Tower and the city cemetery. Best views in Defiance Bay attracts richer types these days. A lot of animancy patrons. He spits again. Dude! He glances at the crowd and lowers his voice. You wouldn't have heard, but something's happened over there a couple months ago. The authorities sealed it off and they're keeping their mouths shut. Mark my words, animancy's to blame. Okay, well. See you later.
Yeah.
So much anger. I love how I'm basically running around with a door attached to my arm. A small door, but still a door. Oh, I can't run around in their grass. No one's gonna be able to, like, scream, "Keep off the grass" to me. Get off the grass! Oh, those are all protesters. Calm water smell faintly of refuse. Let's just start breaking into people's houses. I'm sure they won't mind. Oh, wait, this is like a tavern. Okay. An actress and a patron. Everyone's a philosopher here. Pelt is thick with dust and moss. Plaque below bleeds. Maiden falls. What is this, a museum? See a half-consumed ale slosh its way across the distance to his mouth, spilling across the stains of food long past. Ugh. Glazed eyes glance at the brawl across the room, gaining fervor as the fight extends through the room. Another ale, he murmurs to the bartender, downing his drink and turning towards the wall. He pulls a picture from his pocket, a painting of a young child, old brown hair and green eyes. He just brown hair and green eyes, nothing else. She's kind of like Cousin It, and holds it above a candle. It does not burn. Ales later, he begins to sing. A bar is a mess of broken chairs and a wounded pride, and they all listen for a moment before continuing their drinks. Svef conversations? Is that what they're drinking? Svef conversation? Okay. His ache is felt through the room. His sad story reminds them of their sad stories. When he finishes singing, a silence hangs in the air, palpable among the smoke and the sweat of the yeasty smell of the beer-infused exhalation. He's the first to break the silence, ordering a round of ale for the room. A general din of conversation sparks and resumes, but the mirth is now tempered with far-off memories and thoughts. And he's just swaying and dancing around right now. What are you holding? Oh my god, look at the size of that goblet. Holy shit, it's as big as her head. Lady, where did you get that thing? Also, she has the crazy hair from the beginning of the game when I was in the character creator. I don't know how much reading I want to do right now. Welcome to the Goose and Fox. The man behind the bar is nearly the size of an Almoa. A handle protrudes from his back and his face is set in a stoic frown. He gives you a small nod. Here for drinks. There's a tiny pewter cup in front of him. He turns in one broad hand but doesn't drink from it. This is a lively place. It was founded in the early days of Deerwood independence by a traveling scholar named Earl of Levey. He wanted a place where Kith and all black grounds could gather and hash out the issues facing their new country. He rests his elbows on the polished wood of the bar. It didn't take long for the place to fill up. Brackenbury aristocrats argued with the dock workers from the Gift? Gilt? I think that's Gift. Well, the F and the T are kind of... Or the Gin? I don't know. What is this? It looks like an F and a T, like, merged. While soldiers wrangled with politicians, Deerwoodians have never been known to turn down an argument. He takes a sip from a tiny cup. What happened next? Soon, Kith were coming from farms and settlements too. He waves at the door as if expecting a crowd to bustle in. This place got even more popular with the Valayan soldiers and the salty mast. And that was the problem. He drains his cup. No matter what people say about fair-mindedness and civil debate, there's only so much people will tolerate. Errol found himself on the wrong side of an argument with the wrong Thayan, and when he disappeared a few days later, some said it was the work of that Thayan. He shrugs, spreading his hands over the bar as he surveys the room, but Errol knew which way the wind was blowing. If you ask me, he skipped town, hid out somewhere hoping for rational minds to prevail in Defiance Bay. He cracks a wry grin, if only he could see it now. Name's Bishop. Used to be a scholar of Barath. Now I run the Goose and Fox and keep the regulars in line. He shifts. You see Warhammer strapped to his back. What's more to tell? How do you go from religion to taverns? Journey isn't as long as you think. It started with a Hollowborn. And with this, he takes black bottle from under his bar and fills the pewter cup. It was my sister's son. He takes a drink at the beginning of the Wide Wind's legacy. He was one of the first. Never expected there would be so many after him. Tragedy is part of the cycle, but it's followed by rebirth. Yet every year more parents were grieving for their Hollowborn children, and the gods were silent. That's tough. He leans forward, crossing his arms on the bar. Barath promises rebirth. Cycles, but the only cycle I found was this one. He taps the bar. Have a drink, have another, and another, until I couldn't remember how I got home. Wake up, come back. I finally woke up one day to see my family had packed up and left. For all I know, they'd left days before and I hadn't noticed. But they were gone, so I came here. I've cleaned up since. Not that I found my answers. He tossed the cup back. I've just stopped asking questions. Show you what I got. The merchant's stay. Sure, it's our first night. We'll get a not the worst room. Eh? Oh, I have conversations to
But
read.
dozens.
He shakes his head with
Pretty
a bitter
sure you
smile.
won't find one among them who stood within 100 miles of that bridge when the Godhammer went off. Too bad, too. So
Why
there'll
do
be less of them.
Why do they call themselves the Dozens? Was 12 Deerwoodians stood outside Helgot Citadel waiting for Widewind to cross the bridge there. They had to hold him there long enough for Godhammer to detonate, so that's what they did. Godhammer. That's what they call the bomb they blew up Widewind with. Don't know how much about it other than that. Anything kills a living god, guess you gotta name it. What do you have against the Dozens? Nothing serious. Nothing I don't have against a lot of folks anyways. Dozens said they'd like to take things into their own hands. Gets ugly sometimes. We don't have them in Gilded Vale, but they'd be right at home here. They picked that name so they could do what they wanted and feel like it was right. Got nothing to do with honor or sacrifice. They like to invoke Magrin too, when they especially want to feel right. Somehow I don't think she'd be too impressed with that lot. I'm sure she'd like to set him on fire anytime I use her name. The gods probably got rules against that kind of thing. The Duke's a reasonable man. Maybe while we're in Defiance Bay we can get him to force the people to call themselves what they are. Don't imagine they'd have as many members if they called themselves the Loudmouth sheep fuckers. Gani draws up beside you, her fox falling at her heels, and takes a seat next to you.
Even if you are putting one over on me, it's nice to have a hunting party again.
Sounds like you've been gone from home a long time.
5 years for me. Must be 30-something for Ichimak.
How's the search going?
It's been a long hunt. A long time away from my family. Before, I'd crossed the tundra of Nasitok following caribou herds. I didn't want to leave Kalu and our children, but I was eager to visit lands my people rarely do. But 5 years without finding him. It's like 2 hours of necking. I'm ready to be done with it.
Why do you have to find Persok?
Soul recovery is an old village tradition. We call it the Tarnek Elitsak. Once in a generation, we seek the soul of a much respected and long dead village elder. We tell him what's changed in the village, how people remember him. The only other Tarnek Elitsak during my lifetime happened when I was a girl, not long after Persok died. We feasted on blubber and fermented milk for a week, and we
Fermented
honored
milk
the
sounds
chosen
gross.
huntress as a hero.
But I've never tried it, so...
Then she left, and we returned to our duties. We still sang her name to the skies during festival season, but we otherwise didn't speak of her.
I'm sure your village still remembers you. You're kind to say so, but I'm not so fragile that I need my name chanted in meeting halls.
It's not being forgotten by my village that troubles me. But sometimes I wonder how my husband and children remember me, if they think of me often.
Of course they do. They must. So selective. I would like to believe it, and yet sometimes days go by and I realize that they have not crossed my thoughts. Such days are rare, but they did happen. She looks away, tugging at the strap of her quiver. It shames me to think of it, but more than that, it scares
Still,
me.
there's no point in dwelling on it. More often, I find myself wondering whether Persock will remember us. You claim to see souls. What do you think? Do you remember your past lives?
I figured. Most people don't anyway. I suppose that's why I'm supposed to remind Persock of what he left behind in our village. Has your village changed much since this time?
Masuk is probably much the same as it was 100 years ago. We live between tundra and frozen forests, and the land takes as much as it gives. But our hardships bring us together. And the elders truly unite us. They keep the stories of past generations, and they guide us from season to season, through good years and lean.
Recently, there have been a lot of good years. My aunts say that we've had fewer clashes with neighboring villages thanks to the hunting territories that Persock helped establish. In bad years, we rely on trade with the merchants that pass our shores. We exchange walrus tusks and seal pelts for grains that last us hard winters. Persock brokered a lot of those agreements, too. She holds up the bear figurine. He's got this from one of our Omoa ships that used to trade with us. Sounds like Persock did a lot for your
That's what
people.
I'm supposed to remind him.
Sounds like a hunt. You're on a hunt of your own, though. You feeling the thrill of the chase, or ready for it to all be over? I enjoy the adventure. Every day brings something new. Refreshing indeed. She rises and stretches, looking around. Might as well keep moving if we got some daylight. Yeah, okay. Alright, we're in a tavern. You see an impressive gathering of wild orlands in a ceremonial dress, shaded by a copse of ancient oaks. Underneath the largest oak tree stand two young orlands, hands clasped, eyes clear as they promise to care for and love one another in joining of their clans. An older orland steps towards them to speak, beards seeming to sprout from directly underneath its eyes. His eyes. And declares their union complete. The jubilant Orland clans carry the newly wedded couple away to their tent with snorts of laughter and crude jokes, leaving the older Orland to sit alone beneath the age-old oak. He sighs, observing the scene in the distance. He whispers quiet benediction, glad for their gladness, and melts into the trees without another word. He has seen enough happiness for one day. Mercenary, bodyguard, noble, commoner. There's 3 dudes I need to
Got it.
go in. This looks like it could be a quest of some sort. Anyway, I think I'm kind of tired. I'm getting worse and worse at speaking, so I'm gonna like save it here and go sleep. Yeah. What's my button to